You've probably already seen combat robots before, the remote-controlled, suitcase-sized machines, grinding each other apart on cable television. This is not that. In Shenzhen this year, two robots the size of adult men walked into a ring and started trading real punches, with no human touching a controller anywhere near them. One landed a kick so clean it knocked its opponent's head off its shoulders, sensors and all. The other kept fighting anyway. Somewhere behind that particular fight sits a $144 million gold championship belt. However, the prize was never really about the fight. The crowd's reaction that night landed somewhere between a gasp and a cheer, the exact sound you'd expect from people who didn't know a headless robot could keep swinging until it happened right in front of them. That gold belt behind it all is a 10 million yuan prize, and the company handing it out, EngineAI, is giving away $50,000 humanoid robots for free, no strings attached, just to see who can win it. That's the story most of the internet told about this event, in the comments, in the reaction videos, in every reposted clip. It's a wild highlight clip and nothing more. To put that $1.44 million prize in perspective, at $50,000 a unit, that's close to 29 full humanoid robots worth of prize money for a single gold belt, and EngineAI is handing out the actual robots before a single dollar of it changes hands. Here's the story nobody bothered telling. The company behind all of this is EngineAI, a robotics firm out of Shenzhen, and the competition is called the Ultimate Robot Knockout Legend, or URKL for short. Every team that qualified got handed the exact same robot, EngineAI's T800, at no cost. Same height, same weight, same exact joints, same sensors, same everything. Read that specific detail again because it's the part the highlight clip skipped past entirely. When every fighter steps into the ring wearing an identical body, the outcome can't come down to whose hardware punches harder or whose factory builds a sturdier chassis. It comes down entirely to whose software thinks faster, reacts smarter, and recovers cleaner. EngineAI didn't standardize the robots merely to save its competitors money, although it does happen to do that too. It standardized them because a fight between mechanically identical bodies is a clean, controlled experiment in embodied artificial intelligence, dressed up as a sport people will actually pay attention to. Sit with what that setup actually accomplishes for a second. Take away the hardware variable entirely, and every difference you see once the bell rings. Every dodge, every recovery after a hard fall, every split-second decision to press forward or pull back and cover up comes from a piece of code somebody wrote on a laptop, competing for a gold belt against a room full of rival engineers doing the exact same thing. You could run that experiment quietly in a university robotics lab with force sensors and spreadsheets full of balance metrics, and almost nobody outside the department would ever watch it happen. Put the same experiment inside a boxing ring, add commentary, a live crowd, and a headless robot that keeps swinging anyway, and 32 teams from around the world show up to compete for the chance to prove their code is better than everyone else's, including groups fielded by UC Berkeley, Stanford, Tsinghua University, Zhejiang University, and the University of Hong Kong. The spectacle funds the research. It's how you get a global audience to watch, fund, and root for work they would otherwise scroll straight past. Think of it as the humanoid robotics version of a controlled clinical trial, except instead of giving every patient the same pill, EngineAI gave every team the same body, and the only thing left to test is what happens when different minds run the same physical hardware under identical stress. Formula One teams chase a similar idea when regulators cap engine specs and force competition into aerodynamics and strategy instead. Chess engines get benchmarked the same way, run on identical hardware, so the comparison measures the algorithm and nothing else. EngineAI just applied that same logic to a full-sized humanoid robot that can fall down, get back up, and keep fighting, which happens to be one of the hardest unsolved problems in the entire field. So what is the robot everyone in that ring is actually fighting inside? The T800 stands 1.73 meters tall, built to roughly match adult human proportions, and weighs somewhere between 75 and 85 kilograms, depending on how a given team configures it. Its joints can deliver up to 450 newton meters of raw torque, the kind of force sitting behind a punch that can genuinely stagger another machine and send it stumbling backward. It carries posture control systems, dynamic perception hardware, and shock-absorbing joints designed to survive being struck, repeatedly at full combat force, without simply toppling over and staying down for good. Here's the detail that gives away why EngineAI is really doing this. EngineAI didn't build the T800 purely to fight either. Promotional footage from the company shows the same basic platform, hammering metal components on a factory floor and handling basic household tasks inside a mocked-up living room. EngineAI prices the unit at roughly $50,000 and claims its running cost sits at somewhere around a third of what it costs to employ a human worker doing comparable physical labor. Under its outer shell, the T800 runs a multimodal sensing system that stitches together 360-degree LiDAR with stereo cameras, so it can track an opponent's position and closing speed without ever losing track of the ring around it. Its panels are built from aviation-grade aluminum, and an active cooling system runs between the leg joints to keep the actuators from overheating mid-fight, backed by a solid-state lithium battery pack rated for up to 4 hours of continuous high-intensity operation. None of that is fight choreography. It's the same hardware stack a warehouse robot or a factory line robot would need to survive an 8-hour shift. The Fighting League, in other words, is a side project built on top of a much bigger commercial product. The factory floor is the actual business plan. It's also worth saying that plenty of viewers had good reason to be skeptical before URKL ever kicked off. EngineAI's original T800 launch video, showing the robot breaking through doors and throwing clean, flawless-looking punches, drew a wave of online doubt when it first went up, with plenty of commenters assuming they were watching sped-up footage or careful editing rather than a genuine machine performing live. That skepticism isn't unique to EngineAI either. Xpeng's newer humanoid, called Iron, has sparked its own debate over whether its movements are as natural as they look, and UB Tech, another Chinese robotics maker, had to publicly deny accusations from a US competitor that footage of its factory production line was computer-generated. In an industry moving this fast, with this much money riding on public perception, doubting the highlight reel is a completely reasonable first reaction. It's also exactly why a live, unscripted event with an unpredictable outcome, one where a robot loses its own head on camera and nobody edits that part out, does more for a company's credibility than another polished promo video ever could. That distinction matters a lot more than it looks like it should on the surface, because it explains exactly why EngineAI is willing to give away $50,000 robots for free instead of selling them to every team that signs up. A smaller robotics startup quite often can't afford to design, build, and stress test a full humanoid platform entirely on its own dime. Hand that same startup a free T800 and tell its engineers the only thing standing between them and 1.44 million is better software, and you've just recruited some of the sharpest robotics and control engineering teams on the planet to punish your hardware for free, in public, under some of the worst physical conditions you could legally put a machine through. Tian Feng, the former dean of SenseTime's Intelligence Industry Research Institute, has publicly described robot combat as exactly that kind of arrangement, a high-pressure testing ground for a robot's core components, one capable of shortening the years it normally takes any new technology to mature into something reliable. Every punch a T800 absorbs and survives inside that ring is a genuine data point. EngineAI never had to generate quietly inside its own lab, on its own dime, on its own timeline. Now picture the actual event itself, in full, because the footage from opening night explains exactly why this thing went viral in the first place. 32 teams had already been narrowed down from a much larger global field of applicants through a rigorous qualification process that tested each robot's stability and combat responsiveness before a single official match was allowed to begin. The tournament's opening exhibition finally kicked off on July 16, 2026 at the Nanshan Cultural and Sports Center in Shenzhen, in front of a packed live audience that included the martial arts actor Donnie Yen, who told reporters at the opening ceremony that he'd only ever seen robots fight each other in science fiction movies before that night. Under URKL's rules, no human is allowed to touch the controls once a bout officially starts. Every strike thrown, every block raised, every hard recovery from a fall on the mat happens because a piece of onboard software decided, in real time and entirely on its own, that it should. In one of the opening matches, a white robot named White Eagle landed a high, precise kick against its opponent, a black-clad robot the crowd knew as Matador. The kick connected clean enough to knock Matador's head clean off its shoulders, sensors and all, sending it clattering across the mat while the crowd reacted about how you'd expect a live crowd to react to a robot losing its head in the middle of a fight. Most machines would simply stop there, disoriented and effectively blind. Matador didn't. Stripped of its head-mounted cameras and its primary sensor array, it kept throwing punches and absorbing hits using its torso-based backup systems alone, finishing out the bout half-blind and still swinging. Organizers pointed to that exact sequence, according to Guangzhou Daily's own reporting on the incident, as proof of the platform's durability under sustained, repeated physical impact. It's also, less officially, the single clip that turned a fairly niche robotics demo into something millions of people who don't follow robotics at all stop scrolling to watch. But before this turns into a highlight reel, it's worth being honest about what fully autonomous means here, because the phrase gets thrown around a lot louder than the engineering actually supports. Safety crews stay close to the ring throughout every bout, the way they do at every serious humanoid robotics demo running anywhere in the world, and independent observers following the league have noted that public reporting on URKL hasn't fully clarified how much of a robot's fighting style comes from pre-trained movement libraries versus decisions made live against an opponent nobody trained against directly. Treat URKL as a genuine embodied AI benchmark worth watching closely, not as solid proof that a robot can already outthink a person in a live fight. The balance and recovery problem alone, getting hit hard and staying on your feet, is hard enough to be worth the price of admission on its own. If you're finding this look at how China turns a hard engineering problem into a global spectacle interesting, stick around and hit subscribe, because I break down stories like this one every week, and the strategic angle underneath this particular tournament runs a lot deeper than a single viral fight clip. EngineAI's founder and CEO, Zhao Tongyang, has been fairly direct about why any of this exists in the first place. He said the company wants to use competition to drive research and industry development forward, letting the event feed data back into the technology and letting the technology in turn drive the wider industry. That's not a throwaway line pulled from a press release. It's the entire business model stated out loud, in public, at the opening ceremony. URKL doesn't crown its winner on knockouts alone either, and that scoring choice tells you a lot about what EngineAI is actually trying to measure here. Judges grade every robot on motion control, balance, perception, decision-making, power systems, and structural protection, weight alongside effective strikes landed, body stability, defensive and evasive ability, and overall durability across the full length of a bout, however long the action happens to run. A robot that wins every single exchange but falls apart by the third round scores worse under those rules than one that fights conservatively and simply stays upright and functional. That scoring system quietly turns URKL into an engineering benchmark wearing a fighting sports rules as a costume. The no human piloting rule is the part that actually makes the benchmark worth anything to a robotics researcher. Plenty of humanoid demos you've probably seen online are teleoperated, meaning a person wearing a motion capture rig is puppeting the robot's arms and legs from somewhere off camera, and the flashy result tells you almost nothing about how smart the robot itself is. URKL removes that shortcut entirely. Once the bell rings, the robot has to read its opponent's position, predict what's coming next, decide on a strike or a block, and execute all of that inside a window measured in milliseconds with nobody available to bail it out if the read is wrong. That's a genuinely different and genuinely harder problem than walking across a stage or opening a factory door on cue. Balance under a static load is one kind of engineering problem. Balance while getting hit by an opponent that's also trying to knock you down is a different one entirely, and it happens to be one of the exact skills a robot would need to work safely alongside people on a real production line or inside someone's home. Here's where the bigger picture comes in, and it's the part that makes URKL worth watching, even if you don't personally care about robots throwing punches at each other. Humanoid robots, broadly, are one of the industries China's government has publicly named a strategic national priority, and the playbook running underneath that priority looks a lot like the one China ran with electric vehicles roughly a decade ago. Heavy, early state backing, brutal domestic price competition among dozens of new entrants, and a manufacturing base deep enough to scale production fast the moment the underlying technology actually works. Chinese firms currently account for roughly 90% of the global humanoid robot market, according to the analyst firm Omdia, at a moment when Tesla's Optimus, the American industry's most recognizable name, still hasn't gone on sale to a single paying customer anywhere in the world. Elon Musk has said Optimus could eventually push Tesla's valuation into the tens of trillions of dollars, but that number still rests on a robot the company hasn't shipped commercially yet, while a growing list of Chinese manufacturers are already ramping toward real mass production lines. The capital sitting behind that gap is enormous, and it keeps growing every quarter. RBC Capital Markets estimates the global humanoid robot market could be worth as much as $9 trillion by 2050, and the bank projects China will hold more than 60% of that market on its own, a bigger single-country share than any nation has held in a comparable global manufacturing category in decades. The cost curve backing up that projection is already bending fast enough to make it plausible. Building a single humanoid robot in China cost roughly $150 in raw materials back in 2023, excluding research and development, and several Chinese manufacturers are now openly targeting retail prices under $30,000 as domestic supply chains mature and components get cheaper. It's the exact same downward cost curve China rode with solar panels and, more recently, EV batteries, now applied to a machine built with arms, legs, and joints instead of wheels and a battery pack. When Tesla first opened its Shanghai factory back in 2019, Chinese officials openly predicted it would create what they called a catfish effect, a large, credible foreign competitor, forcing domestic rivals to swim faster or get eaten. Several Chinese robotics founders now say Tesla's Optimus reveal triggered that exact same effect a second time, this time inside humanoid robotics instead of EVs. EngineAI is far from alone in that race. Unitree, another major Chinese robotics maker, has already cleared the early regulatory steps toward a public stock market listing, and UB Tech has publicly shown footage of what it describes as mass production humanoid units rolling off a delivery line, footage a U.S. competitor has since publicly questioned. Every summer, dozens of Chinese robotics firms show up at the World Robot Conference in Beijing to show off new humanoid platforms and the domestic supply chains built to manufacture them at scale. The same trade show floor pattern China ran during its rise in EVs, solar panels, and batteries. On pure sophistication, American and allied robotics still hold their own ground. Boston Dynamics, backed by Hyundai, is still widely regarded as building the single most technically advanced humanoid body on the planet, with its production Atlas robot already committed to real deployments through 2026. But that's a technical edge riding on a genuinely small fleet. China is racing for something else entirely, a different kind of scale, millions of good enough robots, built cheaply at real volume, moving into factories and ordinary living rooms first. Those are two very different competitions to win, and right now China is the only country running hard at both of them simultaneously. Seen against that backdrop, URKL functions as marketing, product R&D, and geopolitical signaling all at once, running through the exact same event at the exact same time in front of the exact same audience. A viral clip of a headless robot that keeps throwing punches anyway does more to convince the world China's humanoid robots are durable, battle-tested, and worth investing in than any spec sheet or investor deck ever could. Chinese state media covered the tournament's launch explicitly as a showcase of the country's technological advancement in robotics, and they weren't being especially subtle about the framing. Beijing has run this exact playbook of turning a technical race into a public spectacle before, and it tends to work because a headless robot that keeps swinging travels a lot further online than a slide from an industry white paper ever will, and every share of that clip is a free advertisement for supply chain China is already building out at scale. The gold belt is real. The $1.44 million prize is real. But the actual prize EngineAI is fighting for sits well outside the ring, inside a $9 trillion market that's still being decided in real time. One punch, one hard fall, and one headless robot still standing at a time. The 2026 season runs on a tiered schedule through December, with the grand final set for November and December, and by the time a single champion finally walks away with that gold belt, every team that competed will have handed EngineAI months of real-world stress testing on a robot it fully intends to sell into factories, warehouses, and eventually private homes. Win or lose inside the ring, the company walks away with the data either way. Every fall gets logged. Every recovery attempt that fails gets logged. Every joint that overheats mid-bout, every sensor that drops out after a hit, every millisecond a decision loop takes too long to fire, all of it lands in a dataset that would normally take years and a small fortune to generate quietly in a private lab, and instead it's getting generated for free, in public, by 32 competing teams who are paying EngineAI in engineering hours for the privilege of trying to win a gold belt off its hardware. That's the actual mechanism hiding underneath the spectacle. This fight was never really robot versus robot. It was always software versus software, running on identical bodies built to survive the results, no matter which side wins, funded by a prize purse that's really just a very expensive, very public research grant with a live audience and a highlight reel attached. Robot combat isn't the only place China lets an AI make split-second calls with no human on the controls, and the version running in hospitals right now carries a lot more weight than a gold belt. There, the machine reads scans and hands down diagnoses instead of throwing punches, live on screen right now.